The Kings take care of business in Utah, sweeping the season series with the Jazz, which is huge. Just taking care of business against a really bad Utah team, a team that didn't have Markkanen, didn't have Sexton, didn't have a few other guys. And so they just took care of business. Just a very similar game as the one that they just played against Charlotte, where it didn't necessarily look pretty all game. There were some stretches that weren't so great, and then there were other stretches where they just completely exploited the Jazz, were knocking down their threes, and looked extremely dominant at times. And so you're never going to hear me complain when the Kings are able to take care of business like this, especially 2 games in a row against inferior opponents when they need every win that they can get. But now they're going to head into a much tougher part of their schedule where they're going to be tested a lot more. And some of the mistakes that they made in these last 2 games aren't going to fly against the better teams. And we still continue to see some bad things, some struggles from the starting unit at the start of both the first and the second half. We saw Sabonis really struggle in this one. We saw Monk kind of continuing to struggle, but then we also saw some really nice things. Zach LaVine continuing to play well. Keegan Murray going for a season high in points and just playing a really elite 2-way game. You had Jonas Valanciunas coming in for Sabonis, who was really struggling, and he comes in and he has a great game, scoring 15 points in 14 minutes. And so I kind of feel like what this game kind of showcased was that not everyone on the Kings needs to be playing well, especially against a team like the Jazz. Like, they have the depth, especially the scoring depth, to be able to just generate enough offense even when they have a few of their most important guys not playing all that well. But it is still frustrating to watch this starting lineup play, even though we've come away with these wins. Because the start of this game, it was just really poor. But that's been the trend. That they haven't started games well, and the starting unit just hasn't played well together. And so to start this one off, it just felt like they weren't locked in. It felt like they were passing up some shots to force some bad shots. They weren't making the easy passes. They were trying to make these kind of crazy passes, forcing passes into bad places, not getting back on defense or overcommitting and over helping at times. And they started off with 4 really early turnovers, and it kind of felt like nobody was really in attack mode. And I felt like this before, like earlier in this season, before all the trades and all that. I felt like we'd kind of seen the same thing at times, where it feels like no one's looking to score early on in the game. Everyone's looking to run certain plays and get everyone a touch, but no one's actually looking to score. No one's looking at the rim. Doug Christie talked about how he wanted this team to shoot 50 plus 3-pointers or 50 3-pointers. And I mean, they haven't been doing that. They shot 36 in this game, and it did feel like they passed up some open looks. There were times when guys were open and they either didn't pass it to them, or guys would get open from deep and they would kind of just continue to look for the next pass. But I think the thing that really was frustrating with some of the offense was that there was no flow, because guys were just holding on to the ball and then trying to wait for plays to develop and trying to pretty much be the guy that passes the team into a bucket, as opposed to getting the ball moving. I felt like there were a lot of moments where one guy would get the ball and they wouldn't be looking to score, they'd be looking to pass, but they weren't making the easy pass to the guy just one pass away. They were trying to make the pass that then would result in a score. And instead of a score, a lot of times it resulted in a turnover. And I just feel like against a team like the Jazz, against a team like the Hornets, like, you don't need to overcomplicate it like that. You just need to make the pass to the next guy, keep the ball moving, and you'll find the gaps, because they are there against this Jazz team. And so it was a very slow start, but then Keegan kind of got us going, hit a 3, locked up Jordan Clarkson, blocked him, brought the ball up and found Sabonis down low, then hit another 3. We saw all sorts of things from Keegan in this game. It kind of felt like he did it all. Offensively, defensively, he was doing a little bit of everything. And then unsurprisingly, the team really started to take off when Keon came into the game for Malik Monk. And thankfully, Keon was okay after the little scare he had during the last game where he turned his ankle. But he came in Felt like the defense picked up. And I thought especially what the Kings did well was they were forcing passes to the corner, but then they were really closing out well on them and forcing the Jazz to either take a tough contested corner three or drive baseline into the help. So they were doing a good job of not giving up the middle of the floor. That led to either just some missed jumpers or some turnovers by guys trying to make passes, driving baseline into the help. And once we got that defense going, it kind of sparked the offense a little bit there. But one of the things that really hurt the Kings in that first quarter was Sabonis playing one of the worst quarters I've ever seen him play. He had just a horrible game, and especially a horrible first quarter. I mean, he smoked an open layup, then got a rebound on the other end, turned it over. He had multiple times where he was just getting back on defense and he would just lose Walker Kessler and let him get behind him for a dunk. I mean, he just couldn't do everything right. It just didn't really seem like he was in the game. Didn't feel like he was locked in. And so then in comes Jonas Valanciunas. And right away it felt like it was going to be a Jonas Valanciunas game. One, because Sabonis was struggling. We needed a spark, so it's the perfect guy to go to for some offense. And two, because the Jazz sub out Walker Kessler, and in comes Kyle Filipowski to play backup center. So Jonas Valanciunas versus Kyle Filipowski, yeah, that's a no contest. Valanciunas is going to win that every time. And he just started dominating. Got it going a little in the first quarter, got it put back, but it really was in the second quarter when he got going. But we saw Malik Monk come back in to run that second unit, but we didn't see Markelle Fultz at first. And, one of the things that I'd seen that the Kings were doing last game that I really liked was bringing Markelle in alongside Monk to give Monk that other ball handler to play alongside, because that's when Monk seems to be at his best, is when he has that other ball handler beside him. But we didn't see that at the end of the first quarter. And Monk was just, his shot selection was really bad, I thought. It has been for the last few games. Just taking forced shots and doing a little too much dribbling. But the Kings were able to end the first quarter tied at 22. DeMar fed Keon inside for a little mid-ranger at the buzzer. And to start the second quarter, the Kings put Markelle Fultz in. Although Fultz did not get many minutes in this game at all, but the Kings started to get it going a bit. LaRavia saved a ball from going out of bounds, pure hustle. That led to a Valanciunas dunk. Then Valanciunas got an offensive rebound and another putback. Then the Kings saw Valanciunas was feeling it against a mismatch, went to him in the post, and JV scores. And the rest of the Kings started settling in a bit. Zach LaVine had 0 points in the first quarter. Then he got a quick 5 in the second quarter off a drive and a 3. Monk hit a 3. And so they started to settle in, but it was still a little shaky. We had a 2-on-1 and Monk just turned it over. And the Kings were allowing some open threes. And a lot of those open threes were off the Kings just overcommitting or overhelping from the corner. I saw DeMar do it a ton where he just kind of got caught ball watching or trying to make a play on the ball, and he was doing it when he just wasn't needed. He was gambling for these steals and trying to help inside and leaving his man in the corner and not recovering. And the Jazz, they started to knock down some open threes. They weren't knocking them down when the Kings got any sort of contest on them. Like, they weren't shooting well, but when they were wide open, they were making them. And I thought throughout this game, we saw many plays where Malik Monk just wasn't making the right decisions. I mentioned the 2-on-1 break that he turned the ball over on. And then just a little while later, he drove into 3 guys when he had 2 guys on the perimeter that were wide open that he could easily see. It was before he really committed to the drive, and instead he just decides to drive into those 3 guys. And so I guess you could say we're still early in this Malik Monk point guard experiment, but it seems to have totally failed. Like, Malik Monk, he's just not a point guard, at least not one that can be a point guard all the time. He has attributes to be a very good ball handler and passer at times, but he just has not shown yet, at least, that he can be the primary ball handler and just him. because he's just too erratic. There are too many times where he doesn't make the right play. And right now, the Kings need someone who can just make the right pass and make the right play. They don't need someone who can just catch fire and make some amazing passes. Like, they just need the guy that can make the right play. That's what they need Monk to be. And that's just not who he is. And that's why his role before was perfect. And so he just needs to sometimes calm down a bit and just make the right simple play. And I mean, he knows it. Like, he talked about some of the alley-oop passes that he tried to throw that failed. And he talked about, needing to not do that and how that also impacted the rest of the team. And he said, like, if I stop doing that, everyone else is going to stop throwing these bad passes. So he knows he's the head of the snake. And so hopefully he can improve and be better as the primary ball handler, because it is still early. And right after some of these plays that I was talking about, he did throw an alley-oop from like mid-court to Zach LaVine. And really, I feel like the rule just has to be, if you're going to throw an alley-oop, make sure it's to Zach LaVine. That's the guy that's going to catch him. Even some of those go awry, but the amount of alley-oops that this team tried to throw that failed, it was hard to watch at times. But then there was a play that I really liked from Sabonis, where he secured a defensive rebound, and he really secured it, because what we've been seeing too much from him is getting rebounds and trying to do too much too quickly with the ball and turning it over. And so I liked how he secured the rebound, like really made sure he wasn't going to turn it over, then made a simple outlet pass. And that outlet pass still led to a transition opportunity. And so that extra second or two that he took to fully secure the rebound didn't take away from the transition opportunity. And so I feel like that's what him and the rest of the team need to realize sometimes. Like, you can still push the pace while not being erratic or careless. And that play led to a Zach LaVine corner three. Keegan was the guy to drive and find him. And then there was another play where the Kings got a stop, pushed it up the court, found Zach LaVine again in the corner for three. He started to really get it going. And the Jazz were just missing a ton of threes. And the Kings were playing some solid defense, and they were pushing the pace the other way. Those missed threes and securing the rebounds off those missed threes was really allowing the Kings to push the pace the other way. That's kind of how they built a double-digit lead in the second quarter. And it was interesting that the Kings did close the quarter with Keon Ellis in the game for Malik Monk. So how the rotations went, they were closing the quarter with Keon, which I don't think is normal. Although Monk did come in for the final possession because it was an offensive possession. But that was interesting to see Keon in the game there. Although it didn't really help the defense, because the defense allowed some open looks, like a Walker Kessler dunk on the pick and roll. That happened a few times. There were some easy looks towards the end of the second quarter. It got the Jazz within 9 by halftime, but it wasn't too bad. To start the third quarter, on the Kings' first offensive possession, they went to the same play that they started the game with. I'm pretty sure it was the same play, where they go to DeMar in the post, have Sabonis and LaVine kind of screening for each other inside, trying to create some chaos so that Sabonis can get deep position in the post, feed it into him. He goes up. And I thought it looked like he got fouled pretty badly on both plays to start both halves, and neither of them got called. And then the Kings got the ball back. DeMar goes into a jumper. He gets hit on the arm, no call. And then a little while later, like, Sabonis is just standing there in the paint, straight up, not moving. Walker Kessler runs into him, and he gets called for a block. There were like 3 plays throughout this game where the Kings just got absolutely hacked inside, and there was no call. Like, just really confusing plays. Because the rest of the game, it felt like the officiating was fine, but there were just these few plays that just seemed so obvious that there were no calls on. But Sabonis was just really struggling, and it was odd. It's odd because usually he dominates the Jazz, and the Kings have won 8 straight games against the Jazz. He's usually a force inside. He's usually getting a ton of offensive rebounds. He had 0 in this game. Didn't even get to his double-double. He was 0 for 4 from 3, 5 for 12 from the field. Had 3 turnovers. His defense was pretty bad, just allowing Walker Kessler to get behind him so many times and get right by him. It was not his game. Felt like he just had his brain turned off. I don't know. I'm not too worried about Sabonis. This definitely seemed like an anomaly of a game. But I will say, apart from like one game since the Fox trade, his scoring has been way down. We haven't seen as much of the Monk Sabonis two-man game. We haven't seen him getting easy baskets off of playing alongside Levine. And so I feel like he hasn't totally found his place within the offense yet. But the Jazz did go on a run. They were just getting open from three too easily. And like I was saying, it was DeMar DeRozan over helping or committing to trying to get a steal and then not getting it. I also thought Malik Monk's effort when it came to both rebounding and closing out was really, really poor. Like, it was pretty concerning. And this is not just an isolated incident. Monk's effort defensively has not been good. There are so many times he's just standing around, not making his rotation, not making the closeout. And, you know, with DeMar, a lot of times it looks like he just physically can't get out to a guy. We know that's not the case with Monk. Like, if Monk's locked in, he can be a better defender than he's showing recently. And I wish he would show it. And so it got a little concerning when the Jazz got within one. You had a play where Sabonis ran the floor, sealed down low against a guard, and then Malik Monk just took a deep contested three for no reason. So that's another play where the shot selection was questionable. You have Sabonis sealed inside. You just got to be able to make a pass down low into him. But then we made a sub. Keon in, of course. And it's just so frustrating how we have to do this every time. We just have to wait the first 4 or 5 minutes of every half before we can, like, get serious. In comes Keon immediately. Keon and DeMar have this nice heads-up switch. DeMar gets the steal. Keon hits the three on the other end. Kings go back up 8. And Keon came in for Levine that time, not Monk. So it was interesting how they switched that in the second half. But the starting lineup situation, it's frustrating. And I feel like the only way that a change is really going to come about is if Malik Monk plays so poorly that he gets benched, because I don't think anyone else is getting benched. So I think it's going to have to, if there is going to be a change, I think it's going to be because Monk plays really poorly and plays himself out of the starting lineup. But then things got a little chaotic, and some of it was good for the Kings, and they did extend the lead. There was a lot of hustle plays. There was a lot of steals and blocks, a lot of transition moments. You had Monk missing an open three, and then Keegan just flying in out of nowhere to rip a rebound away. I was literally applauding as he got that rebound. It was such a good rebound. He also came around a Sabonis screen, drove inside, took a nice like leaning short mid-ranger, put that in. And then you had Keon getting that crazy block shot, pushes it the other way, throws an oop to absolutely no one. His reaction when he threw up the oop and there was literally nobody there was hilarious. Like, the look on his face, he's just like, what just happened? Because Keegan spaced out to the corner and Keon just throws a no-look alley-oop pass. I don't know what that was. The Kings just started throwing a bunch of errant alley-oops and started not converting on transition opportunities. There was another play where Keon had a great strip inside that led to a Zach LaVine opportunity in transition, and Zach LaVine just got absolutely hacked inside with no call. But then the Kings kept the ball. It went out, and then he still scored on that possession. But then there was another play where the Kings are running the floor, and Jonas Valanciunas is out in front of whoever the Jazz center was at the time, and Malik Monk's on the wing. Jonas Valanciunas running down the middle of the floor, and Monk gives him the ball at the 3-point line, which is just not a smart decision. And Valanciunas takes a dribble inside and gets stripped. So there was some chaotic play. Those are the moments where you're like, man, against a better team, this could lead to a run from another team. But because it's the Jazz, they weren't able to capitalize. And the same thing happened against the Hornets in the third quarter, where the Hornets made a run just like the Jazz did in the third quarter, and the Kings were getting all wild with it. But they didn't really punish them, and the Kings, again, closed the third quarter well. Zach LaVine was just playing really well, efficient offensively, playing some great defense in the post on Kyle Filipowski. And then the last sequence to end the third quarter was just beautiful because it was DeMar DeRozan drawing attention, finding Keon Ellis for a three. Then on the other end, Valanciunas gets a stop at the rim, and then DeMar again attracts attention, kicks it out to Valanciunas on the perimeter. Valanciunas says, why not? Takes a three, hits it. DeMar DeRozan is always coming with these like 8 assists, 0 turnover games. That's what he had in this one. He's really good when it comes to assists to turnovers because he does attract a lot of attention, and he doesn't force passes because sometimes you want him to move the ball a little more at times, but he really makes sure that the defense commits to him, takes his time on these passes, and finds the open man. And then to start the fourth quarter, it was really Valanciunas and DeRozan that were dominating. Valanciunas drawing fouls inside, DeMar shooting very well, and the Jazz were not shooting really well outside of Kyle Filipowski. Kings went up 16 when a timeout was called with 9:23 left. Out of that timeout, Keon and Keegan hit back-to-back threes. Sabonis found LaVine on a cut, and he found him for a three on back-to-back possessions, and the Kings just really started to pull away. They scored on 10 straight possessions. The Jazz kind of countered a little bit. They started knocking down some threes. I think they started the quarter 5 for 7 from three, but DeMar DeRozan answered. He answered with a midi and then 2 straight threes, and that was it. So I think you saw some really nice things from individuals in this game, but I also think you still see some of the same problems as a team that we have, both with the starting unit, with certain turnover issues, but you see the strength that we now have in our bench combining for 26 points. Those all came from Valanciunas and Keon. Still interesting to see how they're kind of integrating Markelle Fultz, though, because he played 4 minutes in this game. I definitely think he could have played more because I think what we've seen from him so far is just great defense. And in the moments where things got kind of wild and there was a lot of transition play, I feel like he could have thrived in those. But you can definitely see how in the half court offense, it's not great sometimes. The spacing there isn't always great with him. But we can go into some of the individual performances. We can start with Keegan, 26 points, 6 rebounds, a couple of blocks, a couple of assists, 9 for 16 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3. And the thing that I loved about Keegan's game was it was just an all-around game. Not only was it the 5 for 10 from 3, it was the elite defense. I mean, every player that he guarded on the Jazz, he had multiple possessions where he was staying in front of multiple attacks, playing defense with his chest, and then getting his hands up as they're going to shoot and blocking shots, rebounding the ball super well, shooting the ball with confidence, but then being able to get to his mid-range game, being able to play make a little. He had some really nice interior passes or passes where he drove and kicked to the corner. He got to the free throw line a couple times. He was just doing it all. Huge game from him. LaVine had another efficient game, going 9 for 18 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3. And they always come in spurts with him. And his three-point shot just looks so clean. Every single one of them straight through the hoop. It looked like he was kind of heating up like he did against Charlotte. And then he took that heat check 3 and it was like, okay, are we gonna have the same Zach LaVine? And then he like airballs it or something. Misses really badly. So it wasn't quite, the Charlotte level of 22 points, 8 rebounds. But he's one of the most fun players to watch when he gets it going towards the rim, too. His finishes, I mean, they're just so quick. And so his shooting is starting to come around. Now we're getting to see what we actually kind of have in our offense. DeRozan as well was solid, 8 for 14 from the field. I just noticed he's 1 for 2 from 3. That means one of those threes he hit, he had his foot on the line. Of course he did. 19 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds on 0 turnovers. He had 2 steals and a block. He was selling out for the steals, which definitely backfired a few times, but he just provided some really nice offense, shut down the Jazz run in the fourth quarter. Then you move to the guys that maybe didn't have such great performances in the starting lineup. Malik Monk, 13 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 for 12 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3. His shot selection, not great. Some of his passing decisions, not great. Although it was the second straight game where we did see a two-man game connection between him and Sabonis that resulted in a Sabonis dunk. And so that's nice to see after we hadn't really seen that at all in the past few games. But I think for him, some of these three-point shots he needs to chill on. Like, he's not that good of a three-point shooter. And the decision-making just needs to be better in his passing. And the same goes for Sabonis. The decision-making needs to be better. Sabonis, his game was just something that I feel like I don't know if I've ever seen him play this bad of a game. It just wasn't his night. He didn't shoot one shot late in the shot clock and just took a shot clock violation. Like, he just wasn't in the game. And so those are the two guys, Monk and Sabonis, that we just need to have playmaking at a better level because they're just making some really bad decisions. With Sabonis, I'm less concerned. Like, he'll get it together. These past two games haven't been great for him, but especially this one. With Malik Monk, that's where I'm a little more worried because he's never been proven as a primary ball handler. I feel like Sabonis is just going through a bit of a rough patch, but with Monk, he's stepping into a whole new role and struggling a bit. And so these next few games are really going to be a test on this road trip against some better teams, against Western Conference opposition. Then going to the bench, you had Keon playing 33 minutes, which is great. I love the 33 minutes, 4 for 5 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, for 11 points, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 2 assists, an alley-oop to no one. But he was great. I saw a stat that said that he was the most efficient fast break player in terms of points per possession, which is so funny to me because we saw what happened with him throwing that alley-oop pass to absolutely no one. And we've seen that many times, but really it's just because he gets so many of these fast break opportunities where he gets the steal and there's no one in front of him. So that's why that stat exists. But the Kings passing in general in transition has to improve. Their default is go to the lob. And you can see how they're trying to figure it out. Like they've changed up. Like, it's not the same turnover every game. In this game, we saw Monk pick up his dribble, kind of like how Fultz did a few times that worked out. And so Monk saw that, picked up his dribble early, tried to throw a lob and got absolutely rejected. So still trying to figure out how to convert in transition. If the Kings had gone on to have a horrible fourth quarter, I would have just blamed this game on not being able to convert all of the chances that they blew in the third quarter in transition. But then we have Valanciunas, 14 minutes, 6 for 7 from the field for 15 points and 7 boards. Great game for him, just dominating inside. So nice to have a backup center that can do that when Sabonis is having an off game. LaRavia went 0 for 3, 0 for 2 from 3. He had some good looks from 3, and I like that he was actually shooting them now because we haven't seen him shoot that many threes. One of them just went in and out. But he had 4 fouls. We just haven't seen him shoot a lot of threes, so I'm sure they'll start going down. But he also had a bad turnover where he caught it on the wing and just drove into 2 guys. So he definitely tries to take it upon himself to put the ball on the floor and make something happen sometimes when he shouldn't. But still, I like the effort that he brings. And then we have Fultz, who only played 4 minutes and didn't really do too much. But I absolutely think that there's a place for Fultz in this rotation, despite him not being a shooter. I really think the defense that he provides with his length and size and just having another guy that can handle the ball, I think is really helpful. So I think we need to find some minutes for him here. Also, I just have to point out, on the other side, you had Jordan Clarkson going 0 for 8 from 3. He finally made a basket late in this one, but he went 1 for 14 overall for 2 points. He airballed at least 2 shots, and a third one might have been an airball. And these were open shots. It was just one of the craziest things I'd seen. He was just airballing wide open shot after wide open shot. So I just had to mention that. But the Kings' next game is on Saturday in Houston. This is a Houston team that the Kings have already beat twice this season. Also a Houston team that just lost to the Jazz. But then they also beat the Bucks, beat the Spurs. Tari Eason has been out for them. Also Fred VanVleet. And so those have been big misses for them. And I don't really know what their situations are, so maybe they'll be back. I don't know. But Jalen Green has been on one of his hot sprees, and he loves the game against the Kings. So definitely got to be on the lookout for that. And I don't know who we're gonna have guarding who, because Jalen Green has been playing well and shooting well and scoring. But then they also have Amen Thompson. And so when we're just looking at the starting lineup, Keegan can only guard one player. So it's going to be Keegan on one of the guys and then Zach LaVine on the other. But Amen Thompson, one of my favorite players to watch in the league right now, just his pure athleticism. The Kings are going to need to do everything they can to stop him in transition. And then, of course, we got the Sabonis versus Şengün battle. And Sabonis hasn't been playing his best basketball as of late, but we're going to need him to win this matchup if we want to win this game. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Saturday to recap the game against the Rockets, so I will see you guys then. Peace.